Do you know whether anybody was consulting as to whether to proceed or the merits of the case with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund?
Well, listen, this is not firsthand, but I was told by section management that NAACP members or staffers were talking with a voting section attorney in March of 2009 and asking, when is this case going to get dismissed? Which, of course, is interesting to hear for the first time, that someone's even thinking about dismissing the case that you're in the middle of building. And that was, it seemed strange, but it didn't really give me much pause other than to think that's a really strange request.
Well, there are press reports that indicate a conversation between Kristen Clark of the Legal Defense Fund and a Laura Coates of the department. Who is Laura Coates?
She is a line attorney in the voting section, no relation to Christopher Coates.
And according to the press reports, Laura Coates reported this conversation with Kristen Clark of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, quote, to her superiors. Do you know whether that occurred?
I do, and if Mr. Coates were able to comply with his subpoena and testify under oath, I'm quite confident that he will be able to share the full details of those communications as conveyed to him.
But you're not in a position to do that?
Other than that they existed, and then I characterized them as a request as to when the case was going to be dismissed, as conveyed to me by Mr. Coates.
After the decision is made, and let me back up for a second about the merits of the case or what happens. The department orders the trial team to dismiss the case as to 3 of the defendants, correct?
That's correct.
All right, that's Jerry Jack.
It's in the public pleadings. That's
right.
What happened.
Okay. And also the injunctive relief that was sought was decreased from what was sought in the complaint to the ultimate relief that was sought.
I won't dispute that.
Okay. And those are direct orders from Steve Rosenbaum and Loretta King?
Those are direct orders from Christopher Coates to me on May 15th to prepare those pleadings. And as I said, if Mr. Coates were allowed to testify about what the orders were, he will be able to corroborate what I'm telling you today.
Did he indicate who he received the orders from?
Well, he put the phone down and said what the orders were. And I seem to recall it came from Rosenbaum, but I might be wrong. But Coates would be able to answer that question.
And something you just mentioned struck me. You were told that on May 15th, the day that the filings were due?
A couple hours before they were due.
Isn't that slightly unusual to have direction like that on a case of this magnitude to get a decision the same day that the pleading is due?
I'll differ slightly. The department frequently has tight deadlines. There's so much litigation going on, litigation I would be doing. And at this time period, Rosenbaum was reviewing absolutely everything that Coates was doing, everything. And so he had a heavy workload because he was essentially acting in large stead as the chief of the voting section in place of Coates. So I can understand that Mr. Rosenbaum was probably backed up.
All right. What you just mentioned, that Mr. Rosenbaum is monitoring Mr. Coates, when did that begin?
After the inauguration, and Mr. Rosenbaum moved into that position. If Mr. Coates were here to comply with the subpoena, I'm quite sure he will tell you all about that particular development.
All right. So it wasn't just the Black Panther case that precipitated this dispute or being reviewed. It was shortly after the election that Mr. Rosenbaum was overseeing Mr. Coates, how do you put it, rather closely or obsessively closely?
That's the gentle way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Literally every piece of paper issued?
Every single paper that would go to court would have to be reviewed by Mr. Rosenbaum, which was a departure from previous 8 years, at least the previous 4 years in my personal experience. No front office, in my mind, would have ever had the time to do that sort of thing, but they found it.
After the dismissal of the Black Panther case on May 15th, or I won't say dismissal of the case, but dismissal as to 3, the reduction of the injunctive relief sought, did Mr. Coates' position worsen?
Of course.
Tell us how.
He was, as I write in my Pajamas Media piece, all of his power was slowly sucked away. He couldn't make decisions about to whom to assign a case. He couldn't make decisions about who would review a case, which deputy. He had a very difficult existence after the dismissal of the Black Panther case, and I'm quite certain that if he were allowed to comply with the subpoena, he will fully inform the commission of what happened.
All right. Just so I'm clear, It's almost like a two-step process. After the inauguration, Steve Rosenbaum all of a sudden steps up with the monitoring of Mr. Coates. Every piece of paper and litigation has to be reviewed by him. And then after the Black Panther case dismissal, all of a sudden his duties start to disappear as well?
Yeah, and it's far more extensive than this, and I'm not going to fully get into it. I'm not going to speak for Mr. Coates, but as someone who admired his 30-some career year in voting rights, it obviously was disappointing to see, because nobody knew this area of the law better than Mr. Coates, except perhaps the current chief, who was also very, very, very good. And so Mr. Coates had a very difficult time, and I'm sure he would testify about precisely why he thinks this was happening if he were allowed to testify.
Well, certainly within the department and the line attorneys, there must have been some explanation that was circulating as to why this was happening to Mr. Coates.
Well, I can't quantify that. I mean, there's always talk in an office. So,
how about your duties? Did they change after the dismissal?
Not so much. I was litigating a great case for the benefit of African Americans in Florida called United States versus Lake Park, which is a redistricting case or vote dilution case under Section 2 in the Southern District of Florida. And I had a wonderful summer litigating that case after the Black Panther dismissal, getting ready for depositions, investigations, settlement negotiations throughout the fall. So I had a very good time working on other matters.
Other than the Ike Brown case and the Black Panther case, all your other cases dealt with protecting minority rights. Is that correct?
That's correct. I brought cases to protect Hispanic voters, language minority voters. I brought cases in United States versus Georgetown County, which is a school board down there that county's almost 40% African American and no school board members were getting elected. We sued Georgetown County. I've done election coverages all over the country for the benefit of African Americans. United States versus Lake Park was another case to benefit African Americans who were over 40% of the population of Lake Park and had never elected a candidate since 1923 when the town was founded. And we brought that case and settled that case also.
During this time, initially, Loretta King and Steve Rosenbaum are serving in acting positions, correct? I mean, is acting...
That's under the Vacancy Reform Act, they're serving in acting positions.
At what point did somebody actually step into, a political appointee full-time, step into the position of supervisor?
I don't know exactly when.
All right, roughly when did you...
Fall.
And who became that? Who took that position?
Assistant Attorney General Perez, I think, was confirmed in the fall, so that would have replaced Loretta King.
Okay, how about Steve Rosenbaum?
That's harder for me to pick. It's maybe July, August, September, October. A new DAG was appointed, Julie Fernandez.
Okay, and DAG is what?
Deputy Assistant Attorney General.
So she serves under Perez.
That's correct.
On January 4th, 2010, there was a going-away party for Christopher Coates, correct?
That's correct.
Were you there?
I was.
Who else was there? I mean, by that, any supervisors there?
Yes. Assistant Attorney General Perez was there, and DAG Fernandez was also in attendance. I should note, though, that before Coates, and I'm sure you're going to ask about his going-away speech, before he got to his going-away speech, Assistant Attorney General Perez had to catch a plane, so he left the room. But it tells you that Mr. Coates was about to deliver this speech in front of both of those individuals.
Okay. Well, I do have some questions about his speech. My understanding is he talked about the two voting rights cases that brought by the department involving black defendants, and he indicated that he had been criticized by those within the department. And he had been, correct?
I have a long list here that I'd like to get to about this very matter, many, many, many matters where there was hostility expressed toward a race-neutral enforcement of the law. But you're summarizing one of them. Okay,
then we'll get to that in just a second. So the public can follow along. He did mention two specific cases involving cases in which the defendant was black and the victims were white. First, the Black Panther case, and then what's called the Ike Brown case in Noxubee, Mississippi.